Fatum Betula. Originally released in June of 2020 via solo indie developer Bryce Bucher, is a game that, well, it's a bit of a trip to be honest. Typically referred to as a short, exploration-heavy indie game, Fatum Betula's premise is a relatively simple one. Or at least, on the surface, it certainly appears to be. Feed the plant. And yeah, that's basically it. Off you go, try not to run into anything too creepy while you do. Alright, upon loading into Fatum Betula's starting area, you'll immediately find yourself wandering through a mysterious temple, with an atmospheric vibe not entirely dissimilar to Shadow of the Colossus. It's dark, cold, and entirely empty. Well, aside from the floating plant hovering peacefully above a pool of water, of course. And although it's obvious that you do have some form of purpose in being here, it isn't entirely clear what you're supposed to be doing, which is a fairly common trend throughout most of the game. Unless you happen to trigger an event simply through sheer luck or exploration, or perhaps stumble across a scrap of information that hints towards your potential goal, you won't have a crystal clear idea of what you should be doing in this game. Fatum Betula really isn't the kind of experience that holds your hand. It essentially just sets you free to do whatever the hell you want to do, which is a fact you'll come to be familiar with very early on. In order to even learn of your objective to feed the plant, you need to stand at the edge of this temple waterpool and wait for 10 to 15 seconds, after which you will then eventually meet this. So, once the giant scary face blesses you with 3 vials, and also warns you to not water the plant with what you bleed, because, you know, feeding the blood of your enemies to a magical floating plant probably isn't the best idea, your task is to use said vials to collect and, where appropriate, combine different forms of liquid elements that can eventually be fed to the plant, which ranges from some of your usual suspects such as plant feed, bone marrow, poison, to, immortality.
Well, your father says so, and your father knows best.
And with every form of liquid that you do feed the plant, you will then unlock a corresponding ending that reflects the choice you made, typically after 10 to 20 minutes of gameplay per playthrough. So yeah, if you weren't already aware, Fatum Betula is a very, very short game. But considering the fact that there are 10 different endings in total, and some of them can be pretty damn bizarre, you will end up spending a lot of accumulated time just wandering around in this game. Especially if it takes you a while to figure out where the next ingredient might be. It also probably goes without saying that we are essentially dealing with a walking simulator here. There's no combat or elaborate form of gameplay mechanic to consider, aside from the straightforward act of exploring the world around you, so that much can't be denied. However, instead of the much maligned or sometimes adored trope of a fuckload of narration being constantly thrown at you via sad introspective dialogue that may or may not prompt your eyes to slowly glaze over depending on how you feel about walking sims, the curious nature of Fatum Betula is instead fueled by how wonderfully strange it can be. And yeah, sure, the brisk runtime also helps in keeping things from dragging on too much, or overstaying their welcome. So to cycle back to what you actually do in this game, you will soon come to realise that everything you do within Fatum Betula typically has some form of consequence directly attached to it. The world you traverse is a fairly small one, and it's one that you are directly impacting through your actions. everything from the creatures you kill or feed, the spirits you interact with, or to the ocean and pond that you draw from or contaminate, has an effect. And these are effects that will often come to be reinforced within your designated ending, due to it being the result of a destructive action, a peaceful one, or sometimes a stupid one. Regardless, whichever it may be, you are the one disturbing the natural order and balance of things, so the world is only changing because you chose to change it. Take this tree for example. If you pour the plant growth into the pond, it will grow to a far larger size. However, if you poison the pond, well, what the hell did you think was going to happen? To look at a slightly more comical, yet admittedly also more cruel example, upon discovering the ocean you also find a lone diver marvelling at the sheer natural beauty of the sea, and after extensively expressing his admiration for the ocean, he then goes on to make one simple request of you. Please don't put anything in her. Well, I poured a load of fox blood into it and now everything looks like iron lung. He hates me for this and I really can't blame him. Oh, and just to throw it out there, if you're familiar with my previous work, you probably already know how much I adore the resurgence of PS1 inspired graphics, especially when used in a horror format. And if you also happen to share my appreciation of those graphics, then I probably don't need to tell you how delightfully realised the PS1 aesthetic of the visuals is throughout this game. From the grim Fandango-esque spirits to the creepy American housewife cleaning dishes with a constantly revolving face and an episode of Father Knows Best playing on the radio, Fatum Betula captures everything about the PS1 aesthetic that makes it so damn effective for modern indie horror games. And make no mistake, while it does certainly focus on the exploration side of things, Fatum Betula equally toys with elements of horror. The endings themselves have their own moments in their own ways, but to avoid spoilers, here instead is what a dream sequence looks like within this game. So yeah, that's about all I'm gonna say on this one. I know this has been a super brief review, but if truth be told, without getting into endings, there isn't a huge amount else that I can say here. I don't really want to spoil anything endings wise, these tend to be far more effective when experienced blind, and if you're the kind of person who might complete 3 to 6 of them before then moving on to a different game, well, I'd be exposing an already pretty limited pool of unknown content. It's better to keep that hidden to further benefit your playthrough. Also, I guess I should touch on the whole where the fuck have I been for 2 months and why am I returning with such a small video thing. Well, if you didn't see my recent post and update video, the short answer is that I completely burnt out. If you do want more information about that, please check out the updates I've already posted, but to round this off I'll just say I'm still getting back into the swing of making videos again, so I'm probably going to be taking it slow and just releasing smaller reviews until the drive is back up to full power. I hope that's okay. I know I promised a much larger video, but until I sort my brain out, that is effectively on hold. So for now, that's it from me. As always, I want to thank my wonderful supporters on Patreon for their continued patience and generosity. In particular the highest tiers, Game Master, DarkRaptor86, who also gifted me Fatum Betula, so I must offer a special thanks there, BFD Survivor, and Chikotsky. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you on the next review.